I'm not sure. I think we are now live. Hello, world. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you see this live, you can pop on. There's a link in the first comment that says StreamYard. I'm waiting for the comment to go through. I'll try it again.
I think I see it on this side.
Okay, maybe the first two comments then.
I do see it.
Okay, maybe there's. Okay. All right. Well, we're just getting together, kind of impromptu. My name's Ron. There's Ty over there.
Hi.
We're on kind of opposite sides of the country, and we were talking about Capture One and Photomatix plugin and the ins and outs of all those things of using Capture One, of bracketing and HDR, and when to use it, when to not. And like, hey, I've been doing live streams, Ty. Why don't we do a live stream and talk about this? So other people can join in and ask questions, hopefully. So the first thing we should do is share it a little bit with a couple of groups and see if we can get them involved. So let me we can both take a second and do that, right?
I think so.
Just going to Facebook
There we have it.
/HDRsoft and
Hey, look, I can see myself.
is that good or bad?
Oh, I don't know yet. We'll see.
So a few people watching already. If you have any questions about HDR, Capture One, combination of the two, please either ask in the comments or use that link to pop on.
There we go.
It's Throwback Thursday, so I have a IVRPA, that's the Panoramic Photographer Conference from 2014. Ty has a shirt on from 1999. I don't know. Yeah, I'm blabbing as I'm trying to share
It's fine.
share
It's
this at
fine.
the same time.
Everyone teases me because I always wear black, so
Wearing the
it's
same
just
thing.
easy, nice and easy.
It's sharing it. Sorry, I'm trying to do a couple things at once.
Oh, you're fine. I'm doing that as well.
Having the same wardrobe every day makes it much easier to not worry about it and spend your time worrying about other things. So, okay, I'm just sharing personally, and then I'm sharing to our Photomatix now has we just started a group, Photomatix HDR group.
Saw that.
And
I
if you want to
joined.
be a kind of an inaugural member, there's only a handful of people there so far. And you can maybe set the trend over there.
Yeah, joined yesterday. I didn't even know it was your group, but now I do.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, I just searched it yesterday and only one popped up, and I said, okay, well, I guess I'll join that one. And then
Nice.
I looked at the admin, and there you are.
Saw me.
Yep.
Okay, I've shared a little bit here. I'll
Sounds
probably
good.
think of other places as we go along. But do
Sounds
we have
good.
anybody watching yet? Yeah, we've got a few people watching. Any
Really?
questions about using Capture One, using HDR? My background is downtown San Francisco. It's one of those obvious uses for bracketing, unless you wanted to light the whole place.
And my
So
background is a art studio. Not mine, but it's an art studio.
that's that looks like a family art studio.
Definitely is.
Different kind of art studio than photography, right?
Definitely.
But okay, well, what's HDR for? Well, whoever's not sure about that, there's a few examples, but one of the things that I'll just talk about my experience. I used it for replacing the need for lighting equipment early on, and still, because I come from a 360-degree photography type of situation where, um, in fact, let me just let me use the powers that we have and do some sharing. Let's see.
Definitely.
Uh,
Is there anyone in the chat? Because I don't see anybody commenting.
I see a pretty decent number of people live right now.
Yeah?
Dozen, 15. It kind of goes up and down. Stick around. Let's see. But nobody's commented yet. No.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. So I can
Say
just show.
hi. Tell us where you're from.
Yeah, it's always a good one. I wanted to share. I don't know how big this will be on the screen share. So I don't know if I can go full screen or not from here. Doesn't look like it. So I started using HDR because I would have such an enormous dynamic range to cover shooting a 360. So you have outside, we're probably talking mostly to photographers right now. So if you point your camera out there, it probably wants to shoot at something like 1/1600th or something like our faster shutter speed, where I need to cover also the inside, which
Wow.
could be like a second or two exposure. That's a huge dynamic range to cover. And one solution would be to go and set up a bunch of lights, or with a common more now these days in architecture and real estate is to walk around popping flashes and then later on layering them together and getting all the right pieces from the combination. Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do by any stretch, but it's one way to do it. And instead, I bracketed probably 9, 10, 11 stops of information to put this one together.
Wow.
So that's one big use. Stop
Sorry,
that
I'm
screen
waving
share.
people saying hi without trying to interrupt you.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey guys,
Um,
I'm next door
uh,
to you, Minnesota. I'm in Wisconsin.
yeah. That's Devin, man. He's oh, uh, it's like quarantine time. I know my friend Devin there, he's trying to figure out how to get home. It's like,
Oh, that's that guy.
not that he has a bad situation. I don't want to get too personal, Devin, but um, yeah, it's keeping people away from their homes, home countries, and everything. And I want to acknowledge, I think I have it pretty good. There's some things that are not great, obviously, and I'm not working really as a photographer, but that's loosening up. I hope everybody out there is, going to come out of this okay. I guess enough said, because I don't. Again, I think I have it in the grand scheme of things pretty good. Devin, all good.
Definitely.
Minnesota. Hello, Wisconsin.
Good. Hey,
Sebastian from Poland. Nice.
nice.
Is it late there yet? Kinda. Not for us night owls. Is pretty normal. Are you guys HDR photographers? Sebastian, Devin, I know Devin has definitely dabbled. But um, just to kind of continue with theme until someone asks us questions or hits that StreamYard link and pops on and makes comments and questions or whatever,
Well, what we
shares their screen.
what we could chat about a little bit is how Capture One has the dynamic sliders
Mm-hmm.
in there, and then how that would relate to needing like to use Photomatix,
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like that.
Um, so do we have, you shared to your Capture One group, right?
Yeah,
So we'll probably
I
have,
did.
because we're going to have hopefully people that are Capture One oriented.
Definitely.
I'm in the position to use it some. Um, see, how do I give a really quick, just going on with intro. I work very closely with the Photomatix team, and I've been mostly Adobe user, but I'm also one of those people that would love to have other choices, which I do, like Capture One. So I use it for different reasons, the tethering and stuff. So
Definitely.
not long ago, Photomatix engineers created a plugin for Capture One. Up until Capture 120, there was no HDR at all, and then in Capture 120, they have a function that's called HDR, even though it's working on a single image only. There's no combining of bracketed images. So we
Right.
could talk about the difference there. I can let me show a little bit about that. Um,
And I
Peter
am
from Cupertino, nearby me. I'm in the East Bay. He says he does exclusively HDR for a few years. Cool.
nice.
Pop on and tell us your experience. I'm going to screen share. This is going to look silly for a second, and then it'll
And
make more sense.
I can tell you a little bit about what I do too,
Yeah, please.
because I've used Photomatix in the past before I got into Capture One. But since I've used Capture One, I've always just used my single shot and then controlled the dynamics within that. But more recently, I've been using this plugin because it's there to use. So It's been
Yep.
helpful to be able to blend some of those images that I've shot, and I haven't been able to blend them because the round tripping in it, or the round tripping in Capture One has been a little bit clumsy, I guess. You
I,
know,
I
you have
I
to
heard
toss
I
it
heard
into
I
Photoshop
heard
or
somebody
whatever.
pop on. Stand by who that is. I'm on the Capture One screen, and I'll bring you on in a second. Um, just wanted to point out the problem that combining bracketed shots solves. So first of all, I define HDR as higher. It's high dynamic range, and it would be higher than the camera can handle in one shot. That's my definition. Capture One does not agree. They have a high dynamic range tool here that works on a single image. So it's getting, I guess, the most dynamic range possible out of one image. So I've got a couple of high dynamic range scenes. So this is like here's should be the middle exposure from sunrise. And so the high dynamic range in here, lets you bring up the shadows and bring down the highlights. And I'm just doing it. I'm just dragging it real quick. Actually, I'll just go all the way. Okay, so it recovers most of the most, not the sun, obviously. I mean, that's pretty extreme. I wouldn't expect. I
Can
wouldn't
you
expect
bracket
it.
for the sun?
Almost. You'll see. I'll combine the bracketed shots in a minute, and you can
All
see the
right,
difference. And I didn't bracket it all the way down to like the
sure.
core, but, uh, but but largely, so it's coming up right over, and the actual sun is in the scene, and then it's pretty dark, relatively dark, for over there on the left of
Yeah,
the of the
definitely.
scene.
Some
So
would say that's too much.
what's that?
Pulling down the sky that much.
Yeah, I mean, is it natural or whatever?
Yeah.
It's Hey man, it's going to be really debatable, right? And this is a, I would definitely consider this like an artistic kind of a opportunity compared to something like what you see behind me, which is um, an office space that they wanted to show the outside. Hold on just a minute while oh, I thought I heard somebody, that little bunk noise that I thought somebody came on, but now when I come back to the screen, I don't see anybody. So
Maybe they had to go.
yeah, sorry about that if I messed it up. Let's see. So, to go on, which one should we work with the brackets on? That same one or because this one is going to be a little bit, oh, I'm sorry. Bad host. Screen share. Yes.
Gotcha. That would be helpful.
Yeah. This is going to look silly again for a second. I'm just going to
So,
bring up the
so here's
whole
another quick
screen.
question for you.
Hmm.
Now, would it be better to use the raw images to blend in Photomatix and then put into Capture One to render out your final, or would it be better to use the plugin that within Capture One and blend either a TIFF or a JPEG version?
Yeah. Awesome question. Uh, okay. The answer really is using the Capture One plugin. So using Capture One with the Photomatix plugin kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So the right tool for each job is working. And in the case of RAW, you want Capture One to use that lauded raw processing strength, right?
Yeah,
And technology and all that. So you have good control of all that. You take care of things like reducing noise in the raw process, reducing chromatic aberrations, stuff like that.
sure.
Otherwise, so yeah, the answer would be use the plugin because, and I'll actually may start it because the raw
Yeah,
process of each of these images is something that'll take a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and run it so that we can talk over it.
sure.
So I can just right click, edit with, merge to HDR and Photomatix Pro. Um, we can talk about all these details another time. I don't really feel like it's something we should do right now. These are just output choices. I'm going to choose 8-bit TIFF in this case. There's a reasons for doing all the different options. So right now I'm just going to grab this one and let it start copying because I'm going to spend a minute here combining all 9 images. So to answer some questions that would come up normally as I bracketed them one stop apart. That's what that camera could do. So they were the same ISO, same aperture, and varied shutter speeds only from, so you choose like a center exposure, and then it's going to do 4 under and 4 over. So it's going to have 9 stops of dynamic range. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Because sometimes I'll let it do 9 because that's the max of that camera, and then sometimes I'll manually
Sure.
adjust it for a couple more. And also, uh, things to do before combining them in RAW would be things like, all optional, but my recommendations: lens correction, noise reduction, chromatic aberration reduction, and that's about it. By changing anything in the exposures, then you send the wrong information, because it's going to create this 32-bit file, which is a whole technical thing that, I mean, it's a whole technical thing, and I don't really know that much to comment any further, but don't change the exposure levels.
Gotcha.
Now it's giving us some options again to combine. So if they were not on a tripod, then I could click a line. If I had handheld the shots, same thing. If things are moving around, I could have it remove. So the alignment is the movement of the camera. The ghosting is the movement of things in the scene. So you can work with either of those things here. And reduce noise and chromatic aberration we did in the previous step, so we don't need them. So it's just going to combine what is now TIFFs that Capture One sent. So we're able to do a lot more with that combination. Okay, so the initial one, it's not really a default setting. It's because they're the settings that I happen to have used previously. So I can do a few things here. I can use presets that go anywhere from realistic to crazy, artistically painty, that, it's not something I don't think any of us really shoot for these days. So just clicking around on some presets first, it's just going to show some of the options. Here's something that's pretty similar to what we got by just taking those sliders up and down before, but it is significantly more recovered on both ends of the spectrum, and it's not like the maximum has been done either. So you can use these presets to kind of get to a point where you're close to what you like, and that's both in range, both in recovering the extremes, highlights, shadows, and also in just style and look. I mean, the presets are not made to be working for every image, right? It's a choice. So as you get lower down there, they get crazier, but that's not my thing.
There's actually a question in the comments.
Cool.
Is there a place for HDR in macro photography?
In macro?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Now, macro is not my expertise by any stretch, but
Sure.
I mean, macro photography has a lighting component, right? Usually there's a lighting setup, like one of those. There's some really great compact lighting setups that people use. But if your subject isn't moving, then absolutely. I mean, it would be if you're shooting like a insect, then I think there's probably going to be too much movement, right?
Sure.
But if not, then bracketing could still apply. Unless I'm missing something, unless there's something I haven't thought of. But yeah.
Well, the way that I might see it is, maybe for product photography, it might be a good thing to use, maybe with reflections in jewelry or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah.
Because typically you shoot for all that stuff, so why not just bracket shot it and blend it?
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. In just about any situation, it can be a replacement for lighting. Because when it comes down to it, um, when it's I, I- when it comes down to it, there's what people think. A lot of people think that HDR is a look, and it's just not. It's a tool. It's a technology or whatever. And for most of us, we used it to replace lighting. So by no means do we want it to look like that look, right? We want it to look like a natural, like look at my hotel that I showed you. That's what we're going for. But most of us that are out there, I don't know how many photographers, especially in real estate and things, are out there using it all the time. and it doesn't look like it's HDR. This scene is more like something you might see people using it to do that creative look, that artistic look, which is fine, right? But when you want to make something look natural, then boom, we can do that too.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Oops.
Now that's what I have a problem with my shots, because I tend to shoot at night, bracketed shots, and
Mm-hmm.
so since I'm shooting at night, there's a lot more contrast, there's a lot more saturation, and so my shots don't necessarily look natural, you know.
Yeah, it's a
So
challenge. I'm just going to click real quick just to get out of the screen,
sure.
clicking finish, and then it'll give me a chance to. There's an option to do some post processing in Photomatix Pro if you want to, straightening, cropping, sharpening, etc. Probably since we're using a Capture One plugin and we have all again the powers of Capture One, I'm just going to go ahead and import it back, and you can skip that step if you're using it regularly.
And
And
I
now it's
very
back in
much
there
agree.
for doing whatever kind of post processing we want to do. And I have it on good authority, Capture One users, that a really great option is to now go in with it combined by Photomatix Pro. You get a lot more out of it by then doing post processing with the HDR sliders in Capture One. So I guess there's just a lot of options for workflows there.
Definitely.
Um, we can do a realistic like the one I'm using for the background, for instance. We can do that one too if people want to see, because I realize that
Yeah,
that one
that'd
I
be
did
great.
is kind of your more one that you would see. Like I've done different variations of that same image over a while, and it can be crazy artsy and it can be realistic, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
options. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Capture One users that are real estate agent, or not agents, but photographers. So I mean, if you have something that would relate to their work, maybe you want to show that too.
yep.
Because what I found, I used it many years back, and so when I used it to combine a firehouse that I did for the chief, and yeah, it did not look realistic. It was very oversaturated and stuff like that. So, but it was fine. It was a canvas print that I printed out for him, so it
Yeah,
worked.
pull it up.
All right, okay. All right, so actually,
Let me see here. I'll add
the
you.
one that I have here actually is another shot that I did of downtown Madison, where I'm from, and it's actually, is this raw? This might be a raw image.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
want to
there you go.
mention. I want to mention that that raw conversion of the 9 images is pretty
Hmm.
fast. Good job, Capture One. It's faster than
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, so like this image here is a image that I took of, me and my buddies were just out, and it was kind of rainy, so we just took it. So when I blended it together, it actually looks very similar to this. I think I have it in here. Yeah. So this is the blended image, and this is something that I did many years back. And so I actually use Photomatix to blend this, but I use Photoshop to process it. And so,
Cool.
and here are my other shots that I've done with
Were you
Photomatix
actually
as
in the
well.
rain when you were shooting?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was
Cool.
actually in the rain. So, but this was a very popular shot that I did that people actually wanted lots of prints from it. So, I, you know,
Nice.
I guess the natural look was, I mean, it's fairly close to what it was, just a little bit darker. So, not too bad. But let's see here. This is the shot that looked over processed to me, but it was all right because, like I said, it was a canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is just another version of it. I think I messed around in Capture One here just a tiny bit. So yeah, I pushed it around a little bit. So,
Yeah,
but this is
bringing
the
out.
one that I took in Photoshop, I believe. So, but I didn't use the HDR function in Photoshop. I don't know why, but I used Photomatix to blend. So I just did
Nice. Yeah,
all
that
the,
brings out. You got details in the brightest parts and the darkest parts that you wouldn't have had otherwise, right?
definitely.
Yeah. Very
So
cool.
yeah.
Hey,
But yeah, this is another shot that I took. I actually think I captured too much dynamics because it looks too bright. And so I bring it down a little bit more. But this is one that I processed that I didn't really like the look of.
Yeah,
So
a lot of times when we were in, excuse me, when we were in that era of overdone HDR and it was super popular and everybody was very trendy, and then I realized that sometimes you bracket really well and you have all the details. There's it kind of does the job too well, so it looks flat. So you
yeah,
have the dark parts need to look darker because it's a photograph and it needs to have contrast and it needs to have, they say the shadows are the soul of the image, right? So I,
that,
we all that use it quite a bit quickly realize that sometimes you go through the HDR process and you get this kind of flat looking image initially, and that's
yeah,
okay because it's doing the job of bringing it all together. And if you speak the language of histograms, it's just squishing a histogram that wouldn't even fit on a regular one and bringing it in to where it does fit. So you have all the
definitely.
information there. That's the whole idea. Then you feel like you have a flat looking image, which you do. So that's where your contrast and your blacks and whites, curves, levels, you can play with that to bring back what you want for the vision of the image.
Definitely. All right, so like this one, I just pulled out the raws of that firehouse that I did. This is just another angle. This is with my Sony A7R III, I believe. So I went back and I reshot it because I just was curious about, how I could shoot it better. So, but
That's the one that has that really great low light performance, isn't it?
no,
R3?
it's the A7S.
Oh,
It,
okay.
that would be the A7S, yep. Which actually, the A7S is what I shot this with originally because I do a lot of video work. But then I ended up changing over to the A7R III. So, but I was curious though, would you recommend putting any of the brighter shots in a linear mode to kind of bring back highlights,
What do you mean in a linear mode?
or linear curve? Do you see on my screen where it kind of brings down the exposure a little
Oh, I
bit?
see.
Hmm.
Um, for that point, for the point of before combining them, you would want to have it. Yeah, you'd want to have it linear, so no curve.
Gotcha. Maybe that's been my mistake all these years.
But every rule is made to be broken, right? But
Sure.
uh, for combining when you're combining bracketed shots into that 32-bit, because again, there's this behind the scenes thing going on when you use what I would call true HDR. You're creating a 32-bit image, and that means it's not even an image actually. It's a 32-bit file that can contain all of the lighting information, no matter how wide it is. So
All right.
the where that comes from is the 3D modeling space. They would use HDR data, not even a photo, but just all that data. And this is how I kind of knew about it first, as being a panoramic photographer. Sometimes 3D, often 3D, wants 360-degree panorama in HDR, not for the photo, but for the lighting information. So it has so
Gotcha.
much information. It goes all the way down to like the filament of the bulb, if that's the case, or I guess the sun. And it also has the shadows. That way, when your 3D metallic looking robot or car or whatever drives through the space, the reflection is going to be accurate and the lighting on the thing can be accurate. That's where it comes from. So you're
Gotcha.
creating this 32-bit thing, and that's expecting a linear file to start out with. So that's
Okay.
for all the nerds out there like me, and I don't know about maybe you, but it's a that's where that comes from.
I usually
And
use linear when I do my portraits. That way I
oh
can
yeah,
bring back all that as well. But guess I didn't think about it in blending, so I guess I'm just going to try it now and see how it looks. But yeah,
maybe it's taking a little longer for the raw process this time, right?
no, that's just my computer.
Oh, okay. Or you and I are taxing our laptops by
Oh,
running all these
yeah,
different things on them. So
definitely. If this was my main machine, I would probably do like 16-bit TIFF in like Pro Photo mode. But for
maybe
this, I'm just going to do my JPEGs and Adobe RGB. So
right on.
we'll see what we can get here. But as you can see, like I had such an issue shooting this place because these lights here are just so bright. And so
Yep.
I ended up taking like 30 some images of this. And as I was shooting, some of the fire trucks actually left on a run. And so, then there's cars flying by and people walking by. So I just ended up shooting this like 100 times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, like, I mean, if you do a lot of bracketing, you can. In fact, I can take a minute while it's doing that and say to deliberate. I love that word deliberate. To be really deliberate about your bracketing, you can really walk up to the brightest part and point your. Let's just use the camera light meter for the moment. Just put it in spot metering. Walk up to the brightest part or point to the brightest part. See what the speed is that you need for that. Do the same thing for the darkest part, and then set the camera to capture the whole bracket. And
Yeah,
there's even a little calculator you could use for that
that makes
that
sense.
I'll point out in a second.
Sorry if you hear any background noise. We got some people running down the hallway.
I'm surprised we haven't had any noise over here,
Yeah, you got life going on around us, especially if we're not in a professional like recording studios.
which we are not.
Right, right.
But I got out the cool mic,
Yeah, definitely. You need to have a cool mic.
right?
You gotta have the style points. I don't have that. I have a video mic. So
I'm using quarantine time to pull out equipment and try stuff and do new things, and this is one of them. Is trying to get my audio down. I just put
right.
in the comments hdrsoft.com/EV for exposure value, and that has this really simple little page with a exposure calculator, so you can put in those numbers I just mentioned, like your fastest shutter speed for the highlights, your slowest shutter speed for the shadows, etc., and it'll tell you how to set your camera.
Got you. Well, I didn't do any post processing on those images before I put it into the blending of Photomatix. So this is what we get.
I can,
Definitely got those bright points there. I
yeah,
tend to
yeah.
like balance, or what's the other one?
Let me give you an insider tip.
All right, what do you got?
If you go up to the top and choose the top drop down,
This one?
yeah, and choose exposure. Sorry, choose fusion. Almost at the bottom.
Fusion.
Yeah.
There we got it.
Okay, so Fusion, remember I said you combine the images into that 32-bit file, and then that you have that process called tone mapping of making it into an image. Fusion's
Sure.
different. It's really more of a simple layering. It's very much like if you did it manually by layering everything in Photoshop and masking in and out. It just does it for you. So that has it's great for nighttime photography because it has a
Gotcha.
natural noise reduction side effect, and that's usually the main difficulty in night photography, at least for me. So
So what
that's
is this area here? The lighting adjustments. Like
those
how?
are yeah, those
Go
are
ahead.
ways of that's kind of the oh, in fact, you're showing the can kind of call the legacy version, but it just has a different
Okay.
way of pushing hard to explain
Luminance.
these things, deciding where the bright and dark areas are going to be. If you
Okay.
go up to if you uncheck that box that says
This
lighting
one.
effects, yeah, that
Okay.
slider is kind of a newer version, and as you slide it to the right, it gets more realistic, and to the left, it gets a little less realistic, but it brings out
Ooh.
more of the details in the extremes as you go left too.
Okay.
There's a
I guess I didn't realize that the slider would change if I have it unchecked or checked.
yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
It's funny because being seeing this thing developed over the years, a lot of stuff is this is a new invention. The first Photomatix versions hadn't been done before. No, this hadn't been done before really, and so there's a lot of interesting ways of creating the UI
Cool.
and everything. And to this day, I like to I like to try to figure out what exactly some of the terminologies mean. Now there's a
Yeah.
if you look as you hover over the sliders on the bottom there, there's some quick explanations of kind of what
Oh,
they do.
gotcha.
Keep in mind that they all kind of work together, so making adjustments to one may or may not impact it something you've already done, and there are a
Gotcha.
lot of options. And one reason that you don't see a lot of tutorials talking about what each one does is that it's because it's just so unique to every scene, every set of images, and the same scene could be shot differently and then have a
So
different
how would you
source image.
use macro smoothing then? Because is that mid-tone smoothing, or is that how would you say that?
Sorry, I'm muted so I can take a drink.
Gotcha.
Which one? The
The
micro smoothing?
macro smoothing or the micro smoothing, sorry. Yep.
Well, you
How
get,
would you
in
use
fact,
that?
the best way to do is start with the thing at the bottom there, but really you're looking at
Say that
using
again.
the best place to start is to hover over and then use the explanation at the bottom. That's kind of the official one, but what you're
Right.
doing is enhancing more locally. You say like it's going to pay more attention to the
Okay.
the details.
So the mid-tone area?
Not really. More like, well,
Not really.
again, my explanation. It's hard to explain, and that's why we don't see a lot of us doing
Well,
tutorials on
let's
each thing.
let's
But
see what it does. Okay.
you'll get little enhancements of more localized areas within the scene. I guess that's
Gotcha.
one way to put it. But I just encourage everybody to spend a little time and see what kind of effects they have. And one of the best ways to do that is to um, look at different kinds of presets. And the presets use different kinds of processing as well. Like behind the scenes, there are a lot of different options. So that gets back to why Photomatic is
Maybe
more powerful, is that there are so many more options in terms of what kinds of style and look and intensities
maybe
and
you
everything you
could
can.
explain a little bit of what these do then, because I didn't know that until you told me recently. So I thought that was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. We could be here all day talking about each one, but
Well, just give me
basically,
a
yeah,
over. Yeah.
um,
Go ahead.
like for instance, the details enhancer. That's sort of the OG. That's the first one and that's the one where it's really easy to get fake looking results if you're not careful.
Gotcha.
But you don't have to, but it's just easy.
Hmm.
So you can get that. What I like to use it for is to, like I mentioned before, to really bring the histogram together and kind of flatten it out on purpose so that I can decide, I can do my post processing on it. Where the if you drop down to the next couple of them, they have more
Over
kind of
here.
no on the top left,
Hmm.
like the contrast. You can see like contrast. Excuse me. That pop down menu. You
Oh, I'm
see
sorry. Right here.
contrast optimizer
Gotcha.
and tone balancer.
Hmm.
Those are really they. Geez, excuse me in my cough, man.
That's all right. That was happened to me before, anyways.
It's nervous being on stage cough. They those are easier to get natural results right away, and
Okay.
then fusion, and they're just different algorithms, different engines, different ways of doing it. Tone compressor is the most simple. That one is most you get most photographic look right away. You go down to fusion, then you're getting into those ones that I mentioned is more like layering, more
Yeah.
simplified. And then you get into the interior, fusion interior, and that's really for real estate because believe it or not, one of the most difficult scenes to shoot is an interior with a bright outside with a bright window.
Mm,
It's hard for different reasons, and so those are made specifically for that purpose.
gotcha.
So I kind of zoom through those, right?
Yeah. No, that's good to know
Bob said awesome,
because
but about what, Bob?
no, that's
maybe
good to know
maybe
because
about
I just didn't know anything about that. I just used it just to blend my images together, and then I just went off to Photoshop because that's what I knew.
yeah.
So it's good to know that you can, blend before you get in to Photoshop because, after you get past the raw processing, then you're limited in what you can do. So, but I guess that's what Capture One would also help with, being able to go back to, or not go back, but start with your raw processing and work with the dynamics first before then getting into Photomatix to blend.
I think there are a million workflows to do, and as a
Definitely.
panoramic photographer, I've been combining not only the HDR stacked that way, but also overlapping and then stitched. And there's
Sure.
there are uh, it's funny because I don't know how many times I've reinvented my workflow or obviously tweaking it all the time.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the same thing. Like uh, it's a tool, and it's mysterious to a lot of people about why and what it is, and it's too hard, and it's
Yeah.
it's something that can be really easy. Like if you're a real estate photographer, there are batch processes where you can run it through. In my opinion, I like to run one kind of settings for exterior and one for interior, and then you can be depending on your clients, your workflow, how much you're making, and how much time you're going to put in. You decide on what kind of workflow happens before and after that, right?
Gotcha.
And it's really powerful. Where again, there's a whole industry out there doing that. And when you don't know it's HDR, that's probably what they want.
Cool. Well, this is my final result here. Now, I was having issues with some of the reflections with these lights, and then this sign here. This sign is essentially black, and so that's why I took some of the exposures like real dark.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't know how to blend that in Photomatix, unless would you do something like blend the initial photo and then go back in maybe and grab a real dark frame and blend that one more time at a lower exposure in Photomatix? I don't know how you would do that, but
Yeah, you could no, you could certainly do that. You combine, and I know a lot of people. I've done it. Like, yeah, sure. You can take out. You get. It's just over the years, I just had so many kind of workflows, but some people
yeah,
will get halfway there in the photomatic step. Some people will get 99% there. And
yeah,
if there's something that you want to really make
yeah.
uh, the
So I
star of
can't
the
seem to
image or
darken it.
something, a really important part that you can't quite get. Yeah, I've done that. I've just taken one of the originals. You can also do. Let me show something else here. You can do things like. I'm going to pull your screen down here.
Right?
And hello, we're still here. Vaughn Bender. Man, I see you around a lot, man, and I love that name. How's it going?
So you guys have any questions or suggestions while we're
Yeah,
chit chatting here?
let's have some questions. Let's have some questions on it. It's so much fun. Like again, just for my being silly, I love to be able to say we have a caller because
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, and we're actually by the way, if anybody's is a real estate photographer or interested in it, we are having a real estate Q&A tomorrow at 1 Pacific time. I'll be there with a couple of real estate photographers who we all have different perspectives, which is makes it fun. So you can ask questions there too. I was going to show. Oh, right. Um, Let me do something real quick, really quickly. Um, I'm just pulling something up random into. Uh,
Photo related though, not random, huh?
just grabbing a set of brackets and getting them running while I'm.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Yeah, so I guess with my experience, I've been working on some older shots like I was showing you there, and um, there's a state capitol shot that I did, and I ended up lifting the shadows in one area and then blending, and I got a much cleaner result that way. And so, using the dynamic sliders in Capture One was really helpful to create that look. And so
nice.
I think because my original thought was, you would get most out of the raw image, but what I found out is if you would put it into the Capture One render engine, you can actually pull out a lot more detail that way,
Yeah.
and you know you can roll off highlights much smoother.
Right.
Obviously my example was not very good for that, but
Well, I was just
but yeah,
I've been testing. I just have not officially upgraded to Capture 120, but I just was trying it out.
we
I've
gotta
been using
get you up there,
12.
man.
I've been using 12, so I've been just testing it out.
Ron.
And what's that?
I said, Ron, we gotta get you updated, man.
Yeah. I'll take care of it. It's tough quarantine times, man. I'm not really. I'm purposely not buying things I don't have to. But anyway, the those sliders, um, they're better than I expected. They
Yeah,
have, I mean, they're limited by the information in the image, right? What can you do?
yeah,
There's it's not anything negative on Capture One. It's pretty impressive, frankly, and I'm glad to see that. But when you need
Definitely.
to, like this scene right here, I have up. Maybe I should try it out just in Capture One, but might not be needed. It's a little higher dynamic range than you might think because it's sunrise time, and that's great for photography unless you're shooting into the contrasty areas, right? So
Right.
anyway, I meant to be more random, not bring up a image similar to what I heard of before. But to answer your question about could you just layer one of the images
Oh, sure.
to get the detail out of like that sign, and you can do that right in there if you don't want to layer them in another app, Photoshop or Affinity
Okay.
or anything like that. And let's say I'm going to take something extreme just so you can see it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to blend from the brightest. I don't know if it's going to look that good.
Oh, sure. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I choose the brightest. This I doubt most people will be able to see on the screen share, but what I chose is to blend with the +2 photo with the brush, and then I can just
Okay.
like paint in this dark area, and it'll just bring out from the original one. And I've chosen half the opacity. I can crank it up just to show only from the original. If I really need to
Gotcha.
brighten that up for some reason. So there's always that. Like if there's one little area that for some reason isn't coming out quite how you want it, then you can
Sure.
do that.
Sure. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So there might be that one little spot, but yeah, I mean, like putting the image in Capture One first definitely brings out, like that detail. So you wouldn't necessarily need to. I keep on pointing at my screen like you can see what I'm doing here, but but yeah, like lifting the shadows subtly may be even slightly better than brushing that in, even
Sure.
because the brush is what that's an opacity of the one image you select, and
Yeah.
then is there an opacity on the brush, or
Yeah.
I
The
guess I've
brush
never
is
used it.
like the image has been combined already to the whole image, but
Hmm.
then just the area that you brush, and just similar to opacity brushing in any other app, you can just use the
Sure.
opacity that you want. And so it's just one of again, I'm a big advocate of just there's so many options.
Yeah.
Use the one you like the best, or different situations call for different things. So
Sure.
I just want to point that out because
Well, I would.
what you said does happen a lot.
Yeah.
Um, it
That.
used to happen more and more for Windows because that recovery is so difficult. But then there's
Mm,
that those tools have been getting better, so that's not really needed so much anymore.
okay.
Or maybe it's not needed anymore. I'm not sure if people are
Gotcha.
still doing that or not. But
Well, I guess I'm just a big fan of Capture One's render engine and the detail that it pulls
yeah,
out. So
yeah,
if there's a way that I can pull out all the detail before I go into blending, then I figured I'm going to do that because
yeah.
it's
And
just
when you
much
do that,
nicer.
when you do that, that those fusion, so the natural
Okay.
preset and the fusion ones will be better because again, if you're messing around with the exposures
Hmm.
of the originals, then that HDR tone mapping is expecting something else, and that could cause some issues, but not necessarily. Just something to watch out for. So
Well, I'm not
make the
sure I would
modification.
bump the exposure at all. I would just bring up the shadows and bring down the highlights in the dynamic slider of Capture One.
Yeah, but that's
You know.
messing with exposure, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you got your actual
Not the
exposure knob.
exposure slider, just not the exposure slider, just the
Gotcha.
exposure of the image. Yeah,
Well, another thing that I do though is I leave one one variant, the original, a second variant of the same, and
uh-huh.
I'll bring up the slider or the dynamics that way. That way you have that original that will be blended as well.
Yeah.
And so
Fake
I don't know if
buckets.
that's good or bad,
That's cool. It's a that's something. It's a thing.
but like I said, or like you said, use your tools. So I guess
Yeah,
that's what I was
yeah,
trying to do.
yeah. Use all
So
the tools
definitely,
for all the options. Um,
well, cool.
yeah. Yeah, nobody got get any questions out of here. These guys and ladies, no guys.
Maybe
Well,
ladies later.
what's that?
Maybe ladies will watch later. So say hi to them anyways.
Yeah, there'll be comments coming up on there afterward anyway. Um, I never showed the interior, did I?
Oh, just me.
Self out instead of pulling the.
We lost you for a second.
Yeah, it's just user error. It's gonna happen. Um, I like this one. Let's see. Just while we're here, we've been on. We've been yakking away for 50 minutes. 50 minutes.
I'm sure we could talk
Probably,
for
we
days.
could probably call it a day here pretty soon. But I just thought I would show because I'm sitting. Even though I know it looks so real that I'm sitting in this office, this is a one of those rent my shared office space places that I shot a few years ago. So it's a pretty good example of why you would bracket instead of light it up because I had about several floors, 3 or 4 floors with quite a few offices, plus common space, plus they wanted like people, kind of stock shots of people doing things, and I had like a few hours to do it all. so um, so it becomes a bit like a real estate shoot where I set up my bracketing. You can even see here, like I have a lot of brackets, right?
Yep.
And it's overshot. I didn't even choose the brightest one just now. I chose 8 out of the 9, I guess. And because I had basically set it to overshoot in order to be able to go into a room, set the tripod down, all set to go, had a remote in my hand, and I usually didn't have to make any adjustments to exposure. I didn't have to spend a bunch of time figuring out how my brackets were going to be. I just pretty much overdid it,
Sure.
knowing that I didn't have to use it all. And then I could just compose, look for a shot, see what I could get, uh, and go go go. And so it's a good example of why you would use this kind of a thing because you won't be able to get all of the dynamic range out of one shot, no matter what software is doing it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, maybe that's I don't know. Maybe that's change. Is that changing with the latest? I don't know. This would
I
be
don't
a
know.
D800, I believe. So it's nothing new by any stretch.
Yeah.
But it's a good camera. They boast. Okay, here we go. They boast 14 stops dynamic range. I mean, come on. Not in any usable way. It's not going to look decent at all. And I've tried it, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say because a lot of them talk about picture profiles and stuff like that when they talk about the most dynamic range. So,
Hmm.
just straight out of camera, like standard profile is not necessarily, the full range that they're talking about typically. But
But even
what do
trying
I
to
know?
even trying to recover at 14 is just too much. Like I pulled the
Yeah.
sliders up and down in this one of these source images, couple of these source images in the Capture One. And again, I'm not taking away from Capture One because it's a single image. It's only so much information there,
Yep.
and the extremes you couldn't get both extremes in one. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
Not,
I actually took a HDR photo um, of a church in Colorado. It was up against the mountainside and just looked so beautiful. But when I came across the church, it was kind of high sun, and so I bracketed shot. Just went up, snapped 3 shots, and I left. Just straight up, and I could not capture all the dynamics in the shot. So
yeah,
I should have
sounds.
over bracketed.
Yeah, exactly. Over bracketing is not a bad thing. I've never really
Not
hated
at
that.
all.
That took a little longer to convert those raw, didn't it? Compared to the last one I did, I felt like it did.
Maybe next time I'll time it.
Right?
Our computers are probably hating us right now, though.
Yeah. Cameras and apps and screen shares and yeah,
Several pages up.
my laptop's full. All of the slots, the USBs and the Thunderbolts, because I have a. It's not the newest Mac or anything, and they're all full. HDMI,
Yeah,
everything's packed.
yeah, mine's full as well. So, in fact, oh yeah, I could probably boil an egg on mine.
It's fun though. It's fun though pretending to be like the broadcasters, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
All right, so let's see. Just going with another thing you do up here is choose things like styles. So you can choose the artistic to get the rather extreme setting presets. You can choose realistic or real estate is a good way to go here. So anyway, just pointing that out. So there's a fusion result just kind of out of the box where the extremes, maybe not the darkest in this chair, are recovered, but we haven't even done anything with it yet. Can pump it up. Interior 2 is a little stronger. Brings down, brings up some of that some more. So we're getting everything recovered this way. And
Yeah.
then, so here's what I was talking about that comes out to be probably as flat as I would want it. I wouldn't want it more flat than that. You know, like it's,
Yeah.
the chair has actual details in it there, which isn't exactly needed, but it
Right.
gives us the whole range to work with, and all the way to the outside where you get the buildings, because that's what they're trying to show off is that they're trying to show off a cool
Okay.
downtown uh, office
Cool.
space. So, and even more flat. So let's try that one where everything. I mean, in that case, everything's recovered, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm
I
just
guess
trying to see
that's
if
what
there's
I
any.
would do in Photomatix as well, is kind of flatten out my image and try to tone it. I mean, do it to a degree where it's flexible in Capture One still, because Capture One,
Mhm.
color render is pretty nice as well.
Yeah,
So if you can recover all your highlights and shadows to the point where you prefer them to be, and then take them into Capture One and kind of finish it off.
yeah, and
Um,
then I think that's when you have someone that's most comfortable in Capture One, and you just want to have. You're like, I just want to have something that I can then take to where I'm comfortable
yeah.
and get the most out of it. I think
Yep.
that's a wonderful way to think of it.
Yeah.
So, um, to get it closer to final, I might choose something like this, where I feel like all I need to do is bump some contrast, most likely.
Sure.
Um, but again, let's see, what would I want to show the interior. It's kind of made for recovery of the outside. So, okay, so we can
Gotcha.
choose one of these. Which ones do we like? We liked interior 3.
Now, one thing that I've noticed in bringing back photos back into Capture One is that you don't want to reduce your highlight slider or exposure slider at that point. You want to make sure that you do that all in Photomatix before they come back in, because it just doesn't look good at all.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
interesting. I have a
but if
feeling
you
it.
want to bump it up, that's okay.
Yeah, I have a feeling it depends on. Oh, bump up the exposure. You mean?
Yeah, so like you bring everything to a point where it's flat enough so when you add your dynamics, or add contrast back in, you want to make sure that you push it to a point where your highlights feel comfortable with your highlights, I guess, because you don't want to go
Mm.
down in Capture One. It just grays out all your highlights.
Okay, interesting. I have noticed that Capture One and Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, because you can process your TIFFs in Adobe Camera Raw, and that's kind of a nice
Hmm.
way to do it too. They do act very differently. Like the contrast is a very different kind of animal
Yeah.
in this too.
And I believe, I'm not 100%, but I believe that Capture One, when they get TIFFs and JPEGs back in, I believe the adjustments are optimized for that. Not 100% sure, but I believe that's the case. Because obviously, you don't want to, adjust something that's made for a raw image at that point, you know. So I
Yeah.
believe
Oh, yeah,
that
that
the
makes sense.
sliders change a little bit.
Yeah, it does make sense. Let's try. Let me test your. You said don't move the exposure down, right?
Yeah, you typically don't. Your lightness slider though adds a little bit of contrast and saturation to the image, but the highlight sliders themselves bring it down into a gray point.
I really like what Capture One does. I like what the contrast slider does
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
it's a nice contrast slider.
I mean, it makes. I mean, wow, it makes whites whiter and blacks blacker. Wow, that's what it's supposed to do. But
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like most software. It isn't that simple. I suppose is the best way to
Yeah,
say it. But
I believe it's optimized for a lot of the midtone areas.
hmm. Yeah, from here
Obviously,
I
yeah,
could do
spreads it.
I could go quite a few ways with this one.
Sure.
There's a little bit of straightening and a little bit of cropping needing to be done, but again, most of the way there. And in comparison to, I mean, I have all the information. I have blue sky to the right. That's the brightest area, and the right side of the image out the window is the brightest. I have all the darks recovered. Whether I want to keep them or not, that's another thing. I can play with that probably with a black slider by itself, and
Why
I
don't you
probably don't
test that
need.
out and see how it looks?
Yeah, I just did. It didn't really do anything.
Yeah, it touches the most bottom part of the histogram with the black slider. So try the maybe the shadow slider.
Probably down, huh?
And a cool little tip that I actually have done is depending on how much black or shadows is in the image, you could slam the blacks or the shadows all the way down. And if it doesn't do much, you can actually tap the exposure down. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with a raw image, that is. And then you
We
will start to see when it starts to come into the black and shadow area.
Yeah, I would normally probably hit levels at that point, and just to again, I don't want to be the guy saying things are bad and all that, but
Not at
it's
all.
just a limitation. See if this one. See if I can get the highlights on the right out of this one. Pretty good in the shadows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost to the same. It's getting there. It's doing a pretty good.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
again it, and the scene is I mean, it's a pretty tough scene, so this is pretty impressive. But it's got the out of all my brackets, I think this is the third one I kind of played with when I imported it, and I can't get the extremes. So, like in this case, do you need it? Do you need the chairs to be brighter? Probably not. So
Probably not.
it's not that it's not a usable thing. I'm just saying that to show that it can't. One image can just get so much, but
Yeah,
it's a cool tool.
definitely.
And
That's
if you
why I
want,
was saying, I'm sorry.
yeah,
That's
go
why I
ahead.
was saying before, you could, raise one image up that, you need to raise the shadows up and then have a darker image so that you get kind of best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Photomax does a really good job blending those two together, I think.
You could probably do something with taking two or three shots, recover a whole ton, and then put them
Yeah,
together. But
definitely.
then why? Why not just bracketing? Once you do it a little bit, it's easy.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying is that those are bracketed shots,
Mm-hmm.
you use the darkest image, you recover the shadows, like I was saying before, and then you have one dark, one shadows recovered, and then when Photomatix blends it, it seems to do a really good job kind of balancing those out. But I've only tested a few times, so
Yeah, yeah.
love to
It's
see.
one of those things where you can like do all these head to head tests, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or you can just find a tool for the work you're doing.
Yeah,
Vaughn says
like
getting a Mac
Photomatix and Capture
Mini.
One.
Okay. Vaughn's asking a question for
Sure.
processing your photos. How much memory is minimum? My Air, which is a MacBook Air, I think, is 8 gigs to work, and it works, but I just find it is hurting at times. Um, Minimum computers today. Does anything have less than what? What's the minimum you can get? 4 gig of RAM?
Oh, I don't know. Brand new
Uh,
computers?
yeah. So 8 gigabytes. Let's see.
Probably
I
like
have a 8 gigabyte machine, my last one, and I never really ran into problems unless I was combining like huge panoramas, which I think Vaughn and I both do. And my current one is 16 gigs, which isn't that high these days. You can get 32, 64 gig machines, and it's never run out of space. But to add a little side note, as far as what kind of power you need for a computer doing HDR, it's the RAM that matters the most because it has to load a lot into RAM, and 8 or 16, normal images, unless you're combining so many, like what would that even be for? Somebody wants to bracket 1/3 stops or something, and you have 100 of them. I don't know, but doing normal things, you shouldn't have a problem. Maybe like a really high res and a lot of brackets that are at 16-bit TIFFs might run into trouble, but
yeah.
16 should be fine. Yeah.
I'm running 16 on this laptop, and I would prefer 32.
Well, our 16 gig laptops are working pretty hard right now, but that's got
They
a
are.
lot of there's running some apps in there.
They're
Well,
doing pretty
cool.
good.
Any other questions? Anybody watching? We've had anywhere from a few to I think there was like what was it, 15 or 18 at one point. So that's not bad. Since we just jumped on and tried it out, and let's
Yeah, this
see.
is very impromptu. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have any specific topic to talk about, so that's probably why it's a little bit on the chill side.
That was what we wanted to talk about, wasn't it? Capture
Definitely.
One.
Yep.
I'm glad I was kind of encouraging Photomatix to make a Capture One plugin for some time because I think there's a lot of there's just a lot of us that are how do I say this nicely? Um, for for me, I don't have any problem with Adobe, and I have a team subscription, so I'm not worried about looking for something else. But um, got my reservations, and there always, more importantly, there always has to be competition, and that's the key. And Capture One's a great app, and I just wanted to. I'm glad that we can kind of bring bracketed HDR to Capture One because I know a lot of people were asking for that. So
Yeah.
if so, I should say I should have said some stuff at the top of the show, which I didn't. Um, but and hold on a second while I switch over. Um, Anybody can try it free. Doesn't expire. There's no 30 days or anything. It just adds a watermark to processed images. And if you so Photomatix Pro is the application, and it comes with that. Along with it is the free Capture One plugin, which you can use or not use. If you want to try this for free and get a license for free, I should have mentioned at the top of the show. This HDR software that makes Photomatix is doing a cool thing. They're giving a license for Photomatix Essentials, but that doesn't have the Capture One plugin. That's for the Pro app, but you can still get a free the power of Photomatix if you want. You would just use it as a standalone app. So you could best practice would be to export from Capture One as TIFF
Yep.
and then combine the TIFFs. That's what I recommend. And then you can of course bring the result back and post process it just much the same way. It just doesn't have that convenience of coming back.
That's the old school way.
It's what yeah, it's exactly old school, meaning a couple months ago before that plugin existed. Yeah.
Right?
So so check out that link there, or just go to the homepage. There's one of those, like, every company in the world has what are we doing during COVID-19 at the top. Just click on that, just at the home hdrsoft.com, and come to the Facebook page. We'll be doing some more of these live kind of sessions over the next days. Ty,
Probably
get
want to
involved if you want.
You probably
Um,
want to mention though that we need some more questions to work off of.
yeah, well, we'll have more of an audience because we announced the one for
Yeah.
tomorrow. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we announced it so people know. So we should have people popping in and out.
There you go.
There'll be at least a few of us doing that.
And
And
and questions about Capture One and Photomatix together as well.
mhm.
So go ahead and put that into the comments. We can read the comments later as well. So if a question comes to you, just pop back in and comment, and that will give us something a little bit more to talk about where we can, you know, kind of advance the workflow
Mhm.
and kind of keep the process going. So
Yep. Share your workflows. Share
yep,
your ins and outs of doing this kind of stuff, and join the Capture One professional Facebook group.
that's
Join
me.
the HDR Photomatix group. What else can we plug, Ty? I don't know. I don't really know how
I
to
don't
do
know.
this plugging thing. So,
No, it's fine. We don't have to plug anything.
um,
But yeah,
what about where do they find you?
me,
Yeah.
you'll find me and all my stuff in my Facebook group.
All
So
right.
if you want to join the Capture One Professional Facebook group, then I have all my links in there, and you can come and chat and ask questions and get to know what I do. Because I do all kinds of stuff. So
I
yep,
just started a smug mug. Yeah, it is up and running. Good. um, I haven't really built it out yet, but since we're here talking about where to find us, and I just did it, it's exciting. So
Well,
I'm gonna
if
pull it
you
up.
actually get Capture One right now, they have a Smug Mug. You can get a free Smug Mug membership for 12 months, I believe, with a purchase of Capture One.
Yeah, too late. I paid
What you paid when? A while back.
recently.
Okay. Well,
But I figure Capture One, we can have a professional exchange here because we're supporting the plugin and all that.
definitely.
And SmugMug's not really loading. There we go. I don't know. You can see some. I got to build this out now and see where it takes me. But
Right.
at any rate,
Well, sounds good.
all right. Well, cool. Let's round it out. Let's do it again sometime. If especially if your group says, "Hey, I missed it and I wanted to ask questions," then tell
Yeah,
them that
definitely.
we can schedule one or whatever, and we can see how the quarantine. You're not doing it, but I'm doing the beard thing.
Yeah, this is just my after one day of shaving or so.
Yeah. Figure as long as I can't get anything cut, I'll just leave it, let it all go.
There you go.
All right, man. Well, thanks. This is fun to
All right.
do. I'm glad it worked out, and hopefully we'll do it again. See and everybody that can come tomorrow. See you there, and
Perfect.
yeah,
All right.
good one.
Talk to you guys later.
I'm gonna end broadcast.
See ya.
Adios.